Testing. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? Looks like we got a couple of folks joining here. We'll get started in a bit. Let's just wait for a moment. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Testing, testing. Happy Saturday, everyone. Let me know if anyone hears in the chat. Yep. Thanks all for joining the live stream here. We'll get started in a bit. But hi, Zach. Thank you for joining and your comments here. Let me know if you're not able to hear. My guess is everyone can hear. Okay, so we'll get started. So I'll go for about an hour here. Thanks, Zach, for confirming. So, yep, looks like we have 14 people here joining. I hope you all are having a great Saturday so far. I will be covering a couple items today, but definitely if you have questions or requests, please put it in the chat. For example, like you could put a Q in the front and then just your question there. Okay, so I will be going through just monitoring the chat to see if anyone has any questions or comments that you'd like for me to cover. Okay, but I'm just going to go through the updates with, overall. Hi, Robbie. Thanks for joining 5:30 a.m. Sunday, Asia time. Good morning. Wow. So, Robbie, you're in Taiwan. Oh, not Taiwan. You're in Singapore. Yep. Thank you for joining, man. I appreciate the support. Tricky Part, thanks for joining. Where are you from, Tricky? I know I may have asked this, but I'm forgetting where you're from. But that's cool. We have, people from Singapore. Oh, Toronto. That's cool. Okay, so I haven't. What about you, Zach? Are you from? Where are you from? Okay, so Vinny K. Good afternoon, everyone from Toronto, Canada. 40 centimeters of snow. That's awesome. Zach from Massachusetts, and BJ, Mississippi. Wow. And Massachusetts, is it snowing in Massachusetts? What about the weather in Mississippi? And Robbie, how's the weather out in Singapore right now? I'm actually in like Santa Clara in the Bay Area, California. Yep, that's where I'm at. Yeah, I'd love to visit out there. Only place I've visited is like New York, Northern Hampton, Massachusetts. All right, well, very cool. So, yep, just let me know what your questions are. Put it in the chat, and we'll dive a little deeper. But I just wanted to cover just the latest topics with Bitcoin today. We'll talk about what my overall predictions are, and we'll cover strategy, MSTR. We'll talk about like the big four miners. We'll talk about Mara, Riot, CleanSpark, and IREN. Along with any other stocks you'd like for me to talk about, we could definitely dive deeper here. Toronto is like a mini New York. Yeah, I've definitely got to get out there. Toronto, I'm sure, is a beautiful area here. Mara should end near $20 this month. So I have some updates with Mara and CleanSpark, so don't miss out here. So, we got lots of coverage here, but, just questions, put it in the chat. I will monitor the chat, but first off, just going through, the latest updates here, just with, the strategic Bitcoin reserve Georgia, they're allowing state treasurer to invest in Bitcoin. Michigan now proposes a bill to invest up to 10% of state funds in Bitcoin reserves. Key thing here is it's clearly stating Bitcoin and not crypto, similar to like Texas. El Salvador here, they're changing their law around Bitcoin and just around the status as legal tender, exempt from capital gains tax. So now investors are like, wait, if I hold on to Bitcoin and I don't have to pay capital gains tax, I'm definitely gonna, get involved with this here. And we hear just a number of states now buying ETFs associated with Bitcoin, like BlackRock's IBIT. So we heard just recently, I think it was Mississippi that just bought IBIT, and Plan B. This person here who created Plan B. I mean, he's a big time investor in Bitcoin, but he actually just moved all of his funds to IBIT. So I don't know why that's the case. That's an interesting move, but upside is things will go in complementary. As people invest more in ETFs associated with Bitcoin, price of Bitcoin is still going to go up. If people invest in the Bitcoin commodity, price of Bitcoin demand is going to go up because why? This is all based on the actual commodity itself. Even if you're investing in ETFs or if you're investing in a stock or even in the actual commodity Bitcoin itself. So, yep, if you are joining, please leave your questions in the chat. We'll definitely cover each question or request that you have here. So I like to look at this Bitcoin rainbow chart here from BitBull here. And key thing here is we're still in that Bitcoin bull cycle post-halving April timeframe. You see there, we're hovering at around that green zone there. Green really just represents we're still at that accumulation phase. So now we're hearing about states buying up ETFs and soon, buying up Bitcoin. We hear different countries buying up Bitcoin. In fact, even Hong Kong has interest as well. Japan. I'm beginning to forget all of the different countries that are involved. I mean, I think it's less of a surprise now when you hear new countries getting involved here. And I think, with China like deregulating Bitcoin, I think all of this is really just going to ramp up the price of Bitcoin. But the key takeaway here is, I think that as we head into, February, generally February is the month where Bitcoin tends to do very well. So the first 2 weeks of Bitcoin, we haven't really seen much price action. Good news is, you look at it from like 1 month trajectory here, just towards like mid-January, and we had that downward side there of 92,000. The last 7 weeks or 7 days here, we're seeing some gradual upward motion here. So as we scale out from a logarithmic view here, anytime when we look at Bitcoin, it's important to look at it from a log-based scale just to see, what it is, just based on the visuals that we see from the log scale. But I do think that we're in that healthy consolidation phase before that next gap up, tied to what we see with the rainbow charts here. So definitely not out of the woods yet. We're definitely going to see some huge upside with Bitcoin, running up to 130, 150K sometime around that transition of Q1, Q2. But then upside to like possibly even 200,000 with Bitcoin for the year 2025. Here's another just visual here by Freedom by 40 on X here. So, we're in that consolidation phase. What we did see is consolidation in 2024 from like April before that election news with Trump winning, that long-term consolidation from like April to October. So we're in that consolidation phase before we have that next gap up. So that's really tied to, RSI to start picking up eventually. RSI, once it starts running up to 60, RSI up to 80 plus, we'll see this white line here reach around the orange and red tier here. So, all right. So it looks like now that I'm looking at the chat here, hoping, Tricky here, hoping to see Bitcoin 102, 105 plus before February end. All right. So thanks for that comment, Tricky. So definitely, I do think that Bitcoin, we're going to see that run back up into that 100K very soon here. And first off, thank you all for joining. Happy Saturday. And if you have questions, please leave it in the chat. We'll definitely cover it. I think what we're beginning to see huge upsides. I think now's opportunity. Tricky part. What's my position here? So, what I'm sharing to you here is, if I'm sharing it to you, then I do have position. But, I would encourage, you all, like if you want to be a member of this channel, I could provide more of those details, but I'll just, give you the high level update with what I'm all invested in here. What platform do you feel is the safest to use? Okay, so I I don't have an answer to that, but I like using, like, when it comes to like ETF stocks and all that, I like using Fidelity. I've also used other platforms as well in the past, but I like that, and I've also used Coinbase as well, which I like as well, since they're like the biggest like exchange in the United States. But Jay here, do you think MSTR share price will be in May? Same queue on Mara, CleanSpark, Riot, Hut, or up or down? It's 82 in Fort Lauderdale. All right, very cool. So thank you for that question. We will definitely cover all of that, Jay, especially with all these price predictions. I will cover all of that. As for Hut, I think with Hut, one thing to keep in mind is, Hut was an extremely solid stock in 2024. We had that change in the CEO leadership, but Hut was a workhorse in 2024. Currently at $20, whether we see it continue to go back up or not, but I don't think that Hut will have that same performance that it did in 2024, given the fact that in the miner sector, we have a lot of competitors. It's not like a monopoly market or an oligopoly market. You have a lot of competitors there. So Hut may blow off some steam there, but we'll definitely cover share price of MSTR, Mara, CleanSpark, Riot in this live Q&A here. I'll go through technicals here. Thank you, Kyle, for joining. We have, Kyle from New Zealand, so thank you. So, BJ, give me some good news about Riot. Make me feel good, even if it's a lie. That's funny. New board members for Riot, yeah, good ones. We'll definitely cover all of that. I think now that we have expertise from Hut, the CEO from Hut, now part of the board of directors at Riot. There's synergy, there's assimilation, basically an expertise from a company whose company stock has done so well in 2024. Basically, when you have a new leader on the board, they're basically going to try to implement what worked at Hut 8 to Riot. So all of those best practices, all of those strategic directions from Hut 8, it's kind of like, what type of platform, what type of systems, what type of processes are we using for Hut 8? We're going to apply that same methodology into Riot Platforms. So that's one of the upsides that I see, especially with the new board members, as well as having an engineer who was at Meta and having that data center experience, as well as the new board member with real estate, experience. So with the power of the combined, I think all of that's really going to help Riot, mature, and the share price can really surprise people, especially because it dropped by 30% in 2024. So seasonality, I keep talking about seasonality. That applies to the miners like Mara, CleanSpark, Riot, IREN, all of that. Miners underperformed last year, aside from like a couple stragglers like Hut 8, BitDeer, and all of that. But I think that especially with the companies that have a solid business model with a big HODL, big hash rate, and big potential ink deal, whether you're a hybrid company like IREN or like Riot, that's going to be driving catalysts. And on top of that, I mean, what we saw with CleanSpark was, the fact that they had really, really good financial earnings. I think that it was a big time anomaly. Like one day after CleanSpark price went up, but what did the shorters do? They took advantage of that. But I don't think shorters can really suppress these stocks any longer. We'll look at the institutional investors' details as well. So I hope that my response to these questions help. Please leave your questions and requests in the chat. I'm going to continue forward and then start monitoring even further here. So plan B. So we talked about plan B. I mean, his drawing here, RSI 80, we haven't even seen RSI 80 kick in yet. But when you couple that with this rainbow chart here, we're still in that accumulation phase. We haven't even got to that, that top of the Bitcoin bull cycle yet, especially with 2022, early 2023 being that bearish cycle. So we're still in this early phase here. And I think, buying up Bitcoin still, it would have been better if you buy it at a lower price during the bear market. But still, I think that with Cathie Woods even stating that by early 2030, we're at $1.5 million per price of Bitcoin. Still definitely a low price at this time. All right, so just looking at Bitcoin treasuries here. So, just key takeaway I wanted to just share with you are here as we zoom in, just looking at the details here. So, just key thing here is, just with MicroStrategy, I mean, one of the interesting things about MSTR is like, their cost basis, their average cost for MicroStrategy. I mean, there's investors of like CleanSpark. I mean, I'm an investor of CleanSpark as well as the other stocks as well, like Mara, Riot, Strategy as well. CleanSpark, when they announced their earnings, one of the questions was like, why buy Bitcoin when you can mine it at 34,000? Well, when you look at Strategy's case, they've been buying up Bitcoin like back in 2020 at the price of like $10,000. They continued to dollar cost average through the 5 years all the way up to now. And now their overall average cost is at around the 60K. So overall, you look at Bitcoin price, as it gets to like 120. I mean, they've nearly, doubled in their profits just because they've been hodling up Bitcoin. But this really gives Strategy an opportunity to leverage what they have right now, whether that's increasing ATMs, convertible notes with zero interest, convertible bonds, creating all of the different types of investment plays, STRK, dividend payouts, high risk MSTU ETFs. It's like steroids for MSTR. But the fact that there's investors out there that can't buy Bitcoin. That's why these investors are really attracted to companies like MSTR. You look at even if there's increase in ATM, the upside is that for every share owned, you have more Bitcoin for every share. Although there is downside with it being diluted, but I think just with the overall business model, eventually all of the Bitcoin is going to be sucked up, and that's really just going to add more value to like Strategy. I mean, you look at the charts for MSTR. Look at this. I mean, they've dominated the Mag 7. We hear Mag 7 all the time, like Nvidia. MSTR even outperformed Bitcoin commodity, Tesla, Meta, Google, even IBIT as well. But it's interesting that Plan B. He's actually allocated all of his investments from Bitcoin here to IBIT. So I think it's more of the law of averages type of play, like the outperformer, putting it into underperformer. So really using that same strategy that Robbie Rose has, who's in the chat here. So basically, that's the key takeaway here. All right. So looking in the chat here, so we have lots more people joining, and we have William here joining. Thanks, William, for joining. We have Christian, Alan Massar, Uncle Timbo. I really appreciate you all joining here. So we have about 33 people. Please leave your questions in the chat. All right. So Jay, this question, I've done quite well with Wolf. I've heard a lot of negative upcoming info. Should I trim? So I leave that up to you, Jay. I don't look too much into Wolf, but if it's just based on technicals, if the price looks looks attractive based on the price point, look at that. I just don't have much details on Wolf, but just with BitDeer, like Hut 8 and BitDeer, definitely solid fundamentals. The companies are solid, but just based on technicals, it just looks difficult when a miner does so well in the year 2024. All right, so Jay Z Jacob, any thoughts about just buying MSTR and not Bitcoin, and or converting Bitcoin to just MSTR? So Jay Z, when you look at, so we'll definitely cover MSTR, but just here's my technicals on MSTR here. So you know we saw that run up to like 550, and then people started taking profits at that point there, 550, and then we started seeing that falling knife. 280 was like at that support level, but we see that bounce back up to 380, 309. So the support gets higher there, gets up to breaking through that 400 again. But then now we're seeing the support at the that 320 range, and just recently we saw that 5% run up here. I think because we've been in like a 3-month bullish flag here, descending flag. The key thing is we're seeing a descending consolidation. We're going to see that reverse pattern, especially with price of Bitcoin going up. And just with the recent updates, like even Tom Lee, who's like very famous, he's saying that MSTR is going to get up, to 550 in the next 40 days, which is consistent with what I was thinking. Come April timeframe, we're going to see 550, but I do think that 750 is where we're going to be at, just as price of Bitcoin starts going up there. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. So I'm just gonna, just go back with here and just looking at the Bitcoin treasury. So the big time hodls. So Mara here, we'll talk about Mara as well, but currently at 45,000. So they're behind MSTR. But when you look at other companies behind Mara, you have like Riot, now Tesla. They've been buying up more Bitcoin as well. They were like at that 10,000, and just based on their earnings report, they were able to make money just from holding on to Bitcoin. But interesting thing is that for MSTR, they didn't account for FASB. So FASB is going to take into effect this quarter, which is going to be interesting. Same with Mara. I think Mara is going to use that FASB, towards late February earnings report. I think they're going to blow things out of the water to show their Bitcoin yield percentage when it comes to return on investment with their hodl of 45,000, along with Riot as well. We saw huge upside with CleanSpark's revenue. I mean, earnings per share, actual earnings per share outperformed expected, financial analyst earnings per share. So we're going to see some consistent storytelling with Mara and Riot. And what does that mean? We're going to start seeing that price start running back up. All right, so so just going through questions here. Kyle, BitDeer potential to bump Bitmain and take that ASIC share equating to a large market cap. Yep, so BitDeer definitely, they are a solid company. We did see some, shorting happen because of the ATM that they're using. But overall, I think as they scale up their business, ATM definitely is basically what these miners will leverage, and that I don't think would mean that share price will never go up. Yes, that dilutes the share, but I think overall market capitalization is their overall goal here. All right, so Jay-Z Jacob, I hope that answers your question. So Jay, I plan to see Sailor here in May. That's awesome. I just mean for crypto. Very cool, Jay. So let me know how that experience is when you meet everyone here, with Sailor. So Alan Asser. Okay, so it looks like we have more people joining here, and just leave your questions in the chat, I'll definitely answer. Okay, so LMSR here. So, what do you think of IREN? So, IREN, let's take a look at IREN. So, one of the interesting things is we don't see IREN on here, right, with Bitcoin treasuries. I mean, one of the interesting things is that IREN, they don't use the same strategy that MSTR, Mara, CleanSpark, or Riot does, right? Having a HODL for Bitcoin. They're basically mining at high capacity, hash rate. They're mining over 500 Bitcoins per month, and they're using those funds. They're selling at fair value of Bitcoin, and they're using that to pay off their operations, and they're also bringing in revenue from AI as well. But as they scale up their business, one of the interesting things is when you sell your Bitcoin, when you don't have a HODL, then that means you don't need to use ATM or dilute your shares. So that's one of the upsides with IREN. And one of the things we see from a technicals here, just from like 2024, from a zoomed out view here, we see higher highs here. Yes, during that, just zooming in during that DeepSeek time here from $13 and they dropped to $9. That was like the big time fear factor. But when there's fear, that's when you just buy. Similar to Robbie Rose, he did that. But now you see here, you gain 30% from that drop off. You see that vertical V coming back up. But IREN's been performing very well since January 2025. The last 2 weeks, I mean, going from like $9 to $13. I think all of that was just a sudden hiccup with DeepSeek. I do think that United States right now, especially with Stargate and IREN having facilities in Texas, I do think that there may be an ink deal with like Stargate or SoftBank that's coming up. $13. I do see that we could see that that run up to like $16, whether that's this month or next month in March for IREN. But overall, solid company with a solid hash rate. They also have that AI built in. Using NVIDIA, going in parallel, using their facility for AI revenue as well as Bitcoin. I think that we're going to see some upside here, but it's consistently going up. All right, so I hope that answers for you, Alan. All right, so Uncle Timbo, for investing in Europe, I really like trading 212. Very good broker and very simple to use. Thank you for sharing that, Timbo. I've never heard of that before, but thanks for sharing that feedback here. Okay, so now we're going to go back to just looking at CleanSpark. So CleanSpark, what we learned from their earnings is I think to scale up to 40 to 50 exahash, they may very well announce that they reach 50 exahash sometime in like April, May. Just going up 10 hash rate. They're just going to use that similar blueprint that they've done. But overall, I think that the company, they're not going to leverage ATMs this year, so we're not going to be worried about that. As well as scaling up their operations in the different locations like Wyoming and Tennessee. So they have footprint in Georgia, but they're just going to spread the operations across different states here, which will help the company grow. And I think that overall they have that 2.8 billion assets, but when you look at their market cap, it's a big disparity in that the assets is equivalent to the market cap. I do think that what we've seen over the last 2 weeks, especially post their earnings report, there's definitely an anomaly where the shorters have taken advantage here. But let's look at just with institutional shares here. So you see here an increase in 21% in institutional shares. That's something to also think about here. I mean, looking at this graph, what happened here? So you see that big ramp up CleanSpark institutional ownership. As price goes down, they're just buying up more shares here. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. 21% increase with institutional shares. So when you worry, I wouldn't be so worried because You have, like Vanguard and BlackRock. I mean, these big time players are involved here. Of course, you have a couple people deloading here, but for the most part, 21% increase of all of these big time investors, buying up more CleanSpark shares. And that's also similar to what we see with like, Riot and Mara as well. So you look here, Mara, I mean, they've gone up now. Institutional holdings is 74%. That's a change of, close to 13% change from what was previously reported. So I think Mara, I mean, people are buying up big time with Mara as well. And most of us are like, wait, how come Mara is going down recently? I don't think we're ever going to see anything below $16. And I think that Mara is going to have that run up very soon here. The big time institutional investors, they know what they're doing here. But that's a key indicator, seeing that increase in the shares now 74%. So out of all the miners, institutions hold Mara the most, along with Riot here. So we look at Riot. I mean, they were like at, sub $10 and now at that $12 last week, starting Wednesday, it went up 10% after the news with the board of directors. But here you also see institutional shares going long and strong here, 11.69%. You look at this big jump up here as well. I mean, especially with Starboard and DJ Shaw taking a big hedge with Riot Platforms here. So they've announced, an increase as well. And I think this was attributed to like, the Starboard and DE Shaw here. So we see that consistent increase with all of these investors. So you see a lot of greens here with all of these investors, taking bigger ownership in these investment plays. So like Royal Bank of Canada, we do see a couple pinks here, but I think that's something to keep in mind, that these miners, there's more buying here for the most part. All right, so I'm going to look in the chat here. All right, so I answered Alan's question here, and then Uncle Timbo. Yep. So Christian, next question here. So thanks, Christian, for joining and your question. What do you think of Bitfarms? What is your price prediction? So I think not a lot of people are talking about, Bitfarms. Not a lot of people are talking about Riot. I don't think that a lot of people are hedged against, those type of investment plays. But I do think that we're going to see some potential run-ups here, especially Q1 and rest of 2025. Please keep in mind that, Riot did take a, close to 20% hedge with Bitfarms. In fact, Riot wanted to buy out Bitfarms. Why? You look at it, I mean, if you synergize Riot's hash rate with Bitfarms' hash rate, you have like over 500 Bitcoins mined per month with Riot. But if you have Bitfarms as well, that's over 200 Bitcoins. So that's, that's around more than or close to like Mara's numbers there. I think Bitfarms, they're also looking into HPC AI as well. I think any news like that could really run up Bitfarms. We've seen Bitfarms, last year get close to $4 as well. Riot did, request to buy out Bitfarms at $2.30, but where it currently is at $1.40, I do see that we're going to see that definitely. We're going to see that 100% gain, sometime, in the next 6 to 8 weeks, or even before that is my thinking. So I do think there's going to be FOMO effect kicking in there, Christian. Okay, so Zach Dagger, thanks for your question. And any more questions, please leave it down in the comments below. We'll definitely talk more about it, but I will continue with updates. Leave your questions, and then we'll talk more. So looking at here, CleanSpark's overall hash rate here. So definitely huge upside with CleanSpark. Their hash rate continues to grow here. I mean, you look from January 2024 to January 2025, hash rate ran up by, over 30. So when you look at January to June, it went from like 10 to 20, but like, June to like December, it 2x in terms of the rate of growth. So that's why I think that, going from like 40 to 50 by June, I think it's very well achievable before June, whether it's going to be May or June timeframe announcement or even earlier, who knows? But that can drive up the price, similar to how IREN announced their bolstered strategy, dominating their hash rate even before the end of year announcement. So here, I mean, just overall, one of the upsides here is like their fleet efficiency as well. 16.15. I mean, not close to, I mean, very close to IREN, where IREN's at 15, but 16 joules per terahash. I think, looking at like Mara, Riot, Riot Mara is around still around that 20 range, but I think with the next month announcement, Riot I think is going to be sub 20 as well, bringing down the fleet efficiency as well. But the interesting thing here is, Bitcoin Treasury here, reaching that milestone of over 10,000. I think what they announced with their overall cost to mine at 34,000. That's huge here. And then megawatt under contract, 873 megawatt here. Overall cash here, they have 276 million. Enterprise value, $2.3 billion here. Their HODL market cap, 34%. Bitcoin HODL, Bitcoin price. So I think they do have the liquid cash on hand. Yes, they do have debt, but not extremely high. But looks very good just based on the earnings report that they announced here. So very solid. I like it. Okay, so Zach, what is your short-term price prediction for CleanSpark? 1 to 2 years. Okay, so let's take a look at technicals here. So, what I'm seeing here is, back in March 2024, we saw that price point of $24. But when you compare it now, less than about, I'd say 8 months from that top point here, we're at that support of $9. But we're beginning to see a cup and handle form here. I think that as we get towards the end of the year, we could very well be, we may very well hit that $24, $25 sometime this year. I think that's conservative numbers here, but at least that's like 2.5x potential, 250% gain. That's on the low side, the conservative number. We could very well see this go above 30. But if we see it go above 30, I do think that it has that potential for a big run up here. We did see, institutional investors, right? I did provide those details here. I mean, increase in 21%. CleanSpark, people are taking advantage of this. These big time financial institutions, now at 59%. Of course, it's not close to like Mara, 74% total HODL from financial institutions, but the rate of increase, you see CleanSpark doubling the rate of increase when it comes to financial institutions buying up CleanSpark. So I hope that answers your question there, Zach. I will move on to the next question. So we have about 41 people here. So we'll go for another like 22 minutes. Please leave your questions in the chat. I'm really enjoying all of this here. I hope that you guys are all enjoying this as well. All right, so next up here, so let's just continue down the flow. And Satoshi trades, I really like this posting here. MSTR catalyst, ATM is almost done. Convertible Bitcoin buys coming. Bitcoin is a risk-off asset. FASB earnings, we're going to see some fireworks once MSTR announces their Q1 earnings in less than like 90 days. U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, we've heard a lot about that. Now all of the states are becoming orange here, and BlackRock even buys MSTRs. They're keeping their enemies closer. Now ownership of 5% that BlackRock had to report. So what does this all mean? This is going to create a supply shock to the price of Bitcoin. So where we are now at 97,000, healthy consolidation, we're going to see some run-ups here. So definitely going to be some big upsides here. And I see here with William, Mara will dominate. Indeed, indeed. So Alan, question: time to replace Jason at Riot. So I am going to say no. Jason, I do think that there's a lot of people with with negative vibes with the current CEO at Riot, but I think that this guy knows how to play his cards right. Yes, he has poker experience, but I think that that gives the CEO upside. When it comes to poker, you always gotta know what your competitors are doing, and you gotta play your cards right, right? In the world of business, not everything is black and white, and you got to make decisions that can really optimize return on investment for shareholders. And I do think that with Jason at Riot Platforms, he's very capable, very smart guy. This guy, with that computer science background and his ability to forecast and see how business operations work, when you listen to his earnings report, like prior events, why this company is going to really outperform in the year 2025. So I don't think it's time to replace. I think he's only going to really add value, and that's why Starboard DJ Shaw joined, taking a hedge in Riot Platforms because of his leadership. All right, so hope that answers, Alan. And then we'll continue here with the questions. But yes, please put your questions down below. We'll definitely cover it. I will continue with the updates here. So we talked about MSTR here. Their new KPIs here. Current Bitcoin count 478,000. I mean, they're probably going to announce more updates on Monday. But you see here getting close to that 500K, similar to BlackRock having over 500,000 now. But huge. You look here, their KPIs: Bitcoin gain quarter to date, Bitcoin gain year to date here. So definitely some solid updates. But as we look here, I think we haven't really talked about Mara here, because I think in the chat, what's going on with Mara. So I know William is a fanboy of Mara. I am as well. But I think that what we've seen from December to now, December to February, I mean, this has created so much fear and uncertainty. I mean, no one wants to see this descending drop. We're at that basement low now, but what does that mean? We're going to start seeing things run back up. I mean, 74% financial institutions hold on tomorrow. I'm thinking as we get towards late February, we're going to be in that 20, low 20, mid 20s. In March timeframe, sometime we're going to hit that $30 threshold again. That when things run down very quickly, things can pop back up very quickly. So this is a big time miner here. I mean, they're the biggest miner out there for a reason. Yes, you got to give and take, right? If you have the biggest HODL and if you have the biggest hash rate, of course, your fleet efficiency is not going to be the best like IREN or CleanSpark. But the upside is they have a Bitcoin bank. They're leasing out their Bitcoin. So they're like a Bitcoin treasury, similar to Strategy's business model. But I do think that when there's fear, we're going to see a big FOMO effect kick in, and I think Mara is going to start running up very quickly here. All right, so hope that answers travel. Okay, and then next here, Uncle Timbo, do you agree that MSTR might not be the best return on investment ratio in terms of Bitcoin miners because of the already massive market cap? So Uncle Timbo, yes, that's a great question, right? When we look at MSTR, I mean, most of us are wondering, okay, so the fact that MSTR ran up in 2023 and 2024 at one point getting up to 800%, but then it ended the year 400%. I do think that there's still potential in MSTR. Whether MSTR will outperform like the big four miners or not, I don't have that magic 8 ball, but I do think that because we're seeing so much news around Bitcoin adoption, like different states buying up, like ETFs, like IBIT and buying up Bitcoin. All of that is really going to allow for like MSTR to benefit. We saw that price of Bitcoin going up on Friday, and what happened with MSTR? It went up 5%. So I do think that we're going to see some reverse pattern. But overall, when it comes to like the big four miners, I think that we're very well. We're going to see some reverse patterns in the miners, because why? Such bad performance for the miners in 2024. I mean, you look at like Riot, for example, it dropped 30% in the year 2024 when what Bitcoin ran all the way up. So I think that there's definitely room for growth. 2024 here, you look here at one point, 2023, $18, 2024, another upward here. It retested that resistance, $18. And what happened after that? February 2024, about a year ago, we've just been seeing that downward pressure. And I think that's all attributed to the halving event, right? Come pre-halving, post-halving. So that all of that was explained with mining difficulty, but that story is now going away, given the fact that hash rate has increased, Bitcoin price obviously post-halving, of course, the demand would raise the price up, especially with the factor coming into play. But we're seeing here higher lows, as you see here. So I do think that we're going to see like those similar green candles that we saw at one point with Riot. I do think that come next week, it'll be interesting whether we're going to retest that $14 potential. But I do think that as we head into like March, April, we're going to see that $18, $20 threshold get broken through. All right, so thank you, John, for the comment, John Kleiss. I appreciate the comment there. Expected CleanSpark by July. So that's an interesting question. CleanSpark, I think come July timeframe here, I do think that it's going to be difficult to tell like how the price point will be in July here, but I do think that we could very well see this double by 100%. Whether that's like $18 to $25 by July, we may very well see $22 April, March. It all depends on the price of Bitcoin. I think that come end of year, we're going to see multiple occurrences of CleanSpark breaking through that that 24 barrier, and maybe we might see $30 get broken through as well with CleanSpark. All right, so okay, so thank you all for the questions. It's been very fun here. So Mothership, MSTR, what price point do you see shorts begin to cover? Volume above 18-day simple moving average, maybe. So Mothership, great question there. I think as we look at MSTR here, let's take a look. So what's the short interest in all that here, right? So you look here, 21% change. I think there's like Canadian banks and all that. Now they're all buying up MSTR, as well as even BlackRock as well. But you see here all these filings recently, BlackRock, Citadel, all that. But let's take a look. We see here, a lot of greens here, right? Clear Street, Capital Management, Polar Asset, Cantor Fitzgerald, more Capital Management, DJ Shaw as well getting involved here. So DE Shaw in Riot Platforms as well as MSTR. So you see there, we see here a put with Wolverine here. We see here a reduction from these here. But overall, I think that there's more institutional interest with call options as opposed to like having put options here. So we see that big change with 20 21% incremental change with MicroStrategy. So very interesting. All right. So Minnesota Nice. What do you price prediction for Riot? So Minnesota Nice, I think for Riot, I mean, a lot of people aren't really talking about Riot, but I do think that there's upside 3 to 5x. I think in the near term, we're going to see that $20 in the near term, but I think 2025 is going to be a big year where we're going to see some big candlesticks. I mean, you scale out on Riot. I mean, Riot at one point they ran up back in 2021, like from like $5 to $80 at one point. So I think that overall there's huge upside with Riot and the miners. So I hope that answers your question. So Robbie Rose here, the cloud over Jason with Riot is the heavy house rake since we've using poker analogy. I hold them heavy still, meaning company profit compensation. Yeah, that's the contrarian perspective when it comes to like all these company profit compensations. And I think how that works is like, with the employees there, you have to earn the shares over a duration of time. So like once you hit that threshold based on the amount of years with your tenure, then you're granted the compensation. But I think that has an impact with investors like us, especially when we invest, because part of that is the increase in the shares that goes to the employees as well. All right, so yep, so Minnesota, nice. So what do you price prediction for Riot? Yep, I hope that answers your question. But I think Riot, I mean, now that they're positioning themselves to HPC AI, we're going to see some big run-ups potential, especially with an ink deal. Think about, let's say, if Starboard, no, if Stargate inks a deal with Riot Platforms, that's going to be huge news, and that could really run up the price, like 3 to 5x potentially. Okay, so Jay here, you missed my question about Cobra buying Bitcoin using 90% of profits buying Bitcoin. I'm long companies using Bitcoin holdings, so definitely. Okay, so as a tech play, sorry about that. I'm long KULR buying. They are now turning 90% of profits into buying Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on COS following a Sailor's plan? So if you could rephrase that question, Jay, I didn't quite get that part, but I do think that the HODL approach hasn't been priced in yet. Any company that leverages the HODL approach, there's upside here, definitely. So Jerry Mackery, so the fractal says Riot top 160. So I think 160 is a little too high, especially given the amount of available shares out there. I mean, who knows, right? We saw single digits to $80. I mean, now it's double digits to 160. I wouldn't say that it's not possible, but the likelihood for it to run up to 160, very much lower odds for that to happen. But I do think that the big four miners like IREN, Mara, CleanSpark, Riot, I mean, these companies are going to, outperform this year in 2025. When to take profits and all that, that's very difficult to say. But, when things run up, always consider profit taking as well. But I think that, yep, definitely short squeeze is going to be coming. And Bitcoin price, this is healthy here, seeing the last 3 months consolidating. We're going to see that next gap up, especially with us still in that accumulation phase. We talked about that in this video here. All right, so any more questions? We have, like 5 more minutes here. So any last minute questions that anyone has here that you'd like for me to answer, whether it's next week, any requests. So Alan, what do I think of Cypher? So I think that Cypher, I mean, the fact that they went from like $4 to $6, So all of the recent news with Cypher getting an ink deal with SoftBank, I mean that got priced in, right? $4 to $6 because of the $50 million deal with Cypher because of their AI potential capacity. So that's a small ink deal with SoftBank, but you think about Stargate, they're looking for real estate right now. So real estate is very important, especially to support the United States' initiative to become the top dog with AI and Bitcoin as the powerhouse. So I do think that there is more upside potentially, but then for Cypher to go from $4 to $6, that's a huge upside gainer rate of like 33%. But I do think that there's still more room for Cypher to grow. Okay, and then Robbie Rose here with the comment, they would have to have a market cap of like 25 billion. Yeah, that's big numbers, just with the amount of shares and that price point of 160, 25 billion, that's huge. But I think that in the long-term course, with the miners, we could very well potentially see, in the $100 billion market capitalization as we get through maturity phase. So, Uncle Tim, what do you think the catalyst will be to push Bitcoin and the miners up to new all-time highs? Very good question. I really appreciate that question, Timbo. So, what are the catalysts, right? So, near term, we have earnings report. We got CleanSpark's earnings report. We're gonna get IREN also announced solid earnings report. So we're gonna get Riot's earnings report, Mara's earnings report. I think we're gonna have some huge upside there, with one of the catalysts being their financial results, being able to prove that being a miner now, you can actually operate and generate return on revenue. Other catalysts would be, just with companies that have that potential ink deal with, an HPC AI client, because you think about it, all of this is driven from the government now, like with Trump demanding for the United States to invest in AI, Bitcoin. So think about, before Trump got elected, he partnered up with all of these Bitcoin miner CEOs, right? So I think there's going to be demand initiatives, government partnerships, and support being a miner in the United States, where there's going to be potential benefits with tax implications and all of that. Along with like Eric Trump, I mean, you see him partnering up with Michael Saylor. I think there's going to be some partnerships between the public companies and the government. So all of these things are going to be some driving catalysts, and ultimately the catalyst would be price of Bitcoin. There's going to be a shock supply that's going to happen once you hear like Texas buying up Bitcoin, the biggest state buying up X amount of Bitcoin. Once the first state, announces that clearly that they had a hodl with X amount in their treasury, other states are just going to start doing that. And what's going to happen? Other countries are going to want to copy the United States. Everyone wants to do what the United States does, right? So that's going to really create a shock supply. Bitcoin price reaching all-time highs in 2025. And what does this mean? There's going to be a big time run up with the prices. So Jerry McKay, thank you. Yep. So where can I send a chart to you? So if you can follow me on X, I would, encourage you to follow me on X here. So just going to my X page here, you can follow me here at alliseeisW here. There's an underscore W, and then you could follow me, and then you could post in the chat or even send me a message on that, and I would love to see that chart that you have there. But even if you're not following me yet, just take a look at my page and follow me on X. I'll do the same as well, and then we can chat more. Okay, so then miners have doubled in price the last two halving, BTBT and Riot. All right, so there you have it. I mean, I hope that this live chat was valuable. I really enjoyed it. this has been a great, live Q&A here. And Robbie here, clearly adoption from just a year ago, phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, things just went by so quick. And now I think think about the level of effort that's been put in, like when you compare where we are now versus where we were like even before Trump. I mean, Trump just became the president. I mean, inauguration was like January, but now that executive order is now in place, we're hearing just so much from the state level now. Costco is installing Bitcoin ATMs. The fact that Costco is installing Bitcoin ATMs, Bitcoin is here to stay. The price of Bitcoin is just going to keep going up. And JG Lee here, yep, thanks for you joining as well. I didn't know that you were on here. Um, Jerry, appreciate the comment. I do this all for you all here and for my self interest because it's my passion. So I appreciate the comment. Very well refreshing, and I enjoy the work you put in. It's not easy. Yeah, it's just the passion. I love it, so I keep doing it. But I appreciate the continual support, and just make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. But thanks all for joining in during this weekend here. You guys have a beautiful rest of your weekend, whether you're from like, Asia, Europe, United States, South America, really grateful that you all are able to join at different time points here to join here. But thank you. I look forward to connecting again as we continue to do this live stream. But thanks for joining, guys. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.